Welcome to These Lads Are Mental. My name is Gary.
And I'm Neil, and our podcast is a lighthearted approach to normalise mental health. Before we start today's show, please listen to our disclaimer. This show is just a group of opinions and is not to be treated as medical advice. If you are struggling with mental health, please speak to your physician or reach out to a service such as Lifeline. Thank you. These Lads Are Mental recognises the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the custodians and traditional owners of Sydney. We pay respect to their ancestors and elders, past and present, and value their continuing connection to lands, living culture, and integral contribution to the bright and inclusive future of this beautiful city that we call home.
Today's episode is a little bit different from usual. Today we're celebrating World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, but we're also doing a very specific episode for a company in Glasgow who have decided to do not only a mental health day, but a mental health week for their staff to produce resources, practical tips and things for their staff to improve their mental health. Neil and I have got the pleasure of being part of this. Hope you enjoy the episode. We had lots of fun with it. Let's get stuck in.
Shagsy, how are we?
What's happening?
I had to check which region this podcast was going out, because if you say shagger in the wrong culture, you can come across as a bit of a dodgy bloke.
Well, I think, as I said, I think most of the people was going to be from, they're definitely from the UK, but I think there'll be a lot of Scottish people listening, so they'll definitely know what shagger is.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, shagger, even I'm from Ireland, if anyone hasn't guessed already, a shagger, even in Ireland, is not used colloquially as you use it, like as an all right mate, all right shagger. Like if I said shagger in Ireland, you go, oh, he's actually like,
he
loves a bit shaggy. Which of course was always used for me because I was like such a hot thing back in my day. Now look at me, old and decrepit. Well, how are you all? Hope you're having a good day.
Sully was just telling me off camera that a lot of, in the corporate side of the world, don't really take mental health week. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but they don't take it serious maybe. Yeah,
it's a bit piecemeal. Like there's the whole like mental health day, and even some businesses, even like the top tier businesses, you know, the Googles of this world give all those mental health days. But I've heard a lot of those days that people take off, they end up going on the piss, you know. So I was like, what does that do to you, you know? So it's one thing to kind of give a day off, I say, as a business, but it's another thing to actually put some effort into it. And that's why we were so impressed, like even just to hear businesses are putting in this amount of effort, and also giving you guys, like the staff, an opportunity to voice some of your concerns, you know, privately is amazing. Like even I'm a business owner myself. I don't do this at this level that I've seen you guys. So it's definitely given me something to think about. We do a survey, but it's not specific around actual personal concerns or anything like that people have. So it's a brilliant thing. And it's also, it's substantial in terms of like when we saw some of the questions coming in and some of the thoughts coming in, we were like, wow, this is amazing. This is really good stuff for us to sink our teeth in. And luckily, because we've got up what we're on now, Gary, 30 plus episodes on the podcast, a lot of what you guys are asking, we've either heard of it directly through any of our experts or online and social. And for the most part, we think we have some kind of solution, or we can at least point you in a direction that will hopefully help resolve some of those questions.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, mate, regarding the people who put questions in, because it's probably one of the first pathways that we talk about. And if many of you probably haven't listened to an episode of our podcast before, but the main reason that Neil and I do this is for creating pathways. And I know one of the questions touched on this is there is a lack of support regarding mental health, whether it be in your own family or people you know, or through your business. And we recognise that as well. And yes, we can all say we know some sort of solutions, but a genuine pathway, and the example Neil always gives us, when you break your arm, is a very clear path in terms of you go to doctors, you get a stookie, you wait on for 6 to 8 weeks, it gets taken off, and then you let it heal. However, with the mental health side of things, we don't really have a genuine pathway. People don't really know where to jump on, even if they are keen to get it fixed or to work on something or to try and improve how they're feeling. They don't know where to start. So this is the reason that we're doing this podcast, is to talk about it in a normal way. And again, credit to you people who put a question in, because it's not easy. That is the first step, is just talking about it. And many of you, we got some unbelievably good questions, great topics, and some of you are very open. So this is what it's all about: normal people, normal things that we all go through. And that's probably one thing before we go even further, is every single thing that I read through all those questions, I can relate to in some way. Apart from motherhood, I haven't quite. Obviously, can't relate.
Technology hasn't advanced that far yet, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, I mean, we are trying to make it a joke of it, and that's really the thing that we try and do. As Gary was saying, I mean, in essence, it sounds mad to say this, but it's really not rocket science. That's a mad thing about mental health, right? It's really about breaking down the stigma, which we try and do through the podcast, but that can be done a multitude of ways, and even by your guys' company doing this, it's whether you know it or not, you're already breaking down those layers of stigma, because for one, it's getting you guys thinking about it. You're putting words down on paper. You're sending it through. We're discussing it. Like, that's huge. Like, that's absolutely huge. We need more of that across the board in every walk of life. And we've said as well, mental health should be a thing that we can talk about just like we would anything else. It was like dietary, you know. 10 years ago, you wouldn't, like, saying I'm lactose intolerant or I'm gluten-free, people go, oh, what a fucking wanker. Nowadays, it's just a thing. It is what it is. Everywhere has it. And hopefully mental health can get to that point as well. And just the Are You Okay Day, which is like asking people, are they okay, which is great. But even just digging a little bit more. And that's the thing. Mental health is not just about you in your own scenario. And that's why it's important to tell people, because if you tell your missus or your partner or your grandparents or your work colleagues, let's say you've got 5 or 6 people in your immediate group that know about your, whatever your thing is, depression or anxiety or anything. When you're in that state of mind, then they can actually spot the changes in your behavior. Oh, Neil's not coming out as much as he used to, or he's snapping a bit more, or he's not getting out of bed. And then those people, their red flags go up and go, I actually don't know if Neil's all right at the moment. And then you can have those open conversations. And that little scenario alone is so much better for you and your whole surrounding family or community than it is if you just sit there in silence. Because if you sit there in silence, no one's going to know. And then they might just come to presumptions that, oh, he's just a bit of a tosser, you know, or things like that, when actually there's probably just something going on. So that's a really big thing. And then I'm not even sure what it's like I know the UK is pretty good with the NHS, but speaking from lived experience, which is a term we hear a lot now, as Gary was saying, that pathway is just non-existent, right? And we're spending a lot of time mentally ourselves trying to figure out what does that look like. But I've gone through that, and that's one little bit of advice. If you leave this podcast without getting anything, is don't give up, because I went in to get diagnosed years ago, and the doctor was like really pretty crap, like, you know, oh, how are you feeling? Like really willy-nilly. Then they gave me this archaic picture chart, which was like, how suicidal are you out of 10? And I was like, even if I shouldn't laugh at this, but even if I was a 10, let's say, would you put the 10 down? No, you wouldn't, because you'd be like, if I put a 10 down, he's going to think I'm, you know, in a danger area. Like, is he going to call the cops? That's what, like, I was thinking. And then how do you even measure where you are really anyway? You know what I mean? And what you are today versus tomorrow. So all this, so like, it's just nowhere near the level of what we need to do. But, and then even after you do that, over here in Australia, they actually have a 10 pack you can get from the government, which is a subsidized thing, which in theory sounds good. And it is good. Don't get me wrong. But anyone will know if you're struggling with trauma or depression, it takes more than 10 sessions to get through it. So it kind of gets you on the pathway, but then you still have to pay for it, you know? So like, there are limiting factors to even getting better, financial, you know, all those things. So, you know, the answer to that, like, I know there was actually one of the questions if money wasn't an object, which we can get to, but, you know, ideally that kind of level of service should be free. Doctors should have education across the board to make people feel comfortable with doing it. But I think a lot of the answer is really in you, me, Gary, all of us, to get ourselves not necessarily out of this, but provide that bubble of support around those people. And hopefully one day, like, the authorities will pick up with it. But yeah, if you go through the system and you get a bad doctor, don't give up. It happens. I started psychology, had a terrible psychologist, which could put you off and go, oh, that's a load of, I'm not going back. But I swapped them out, got a new person, totally different experience, and it was amazing. So don't give up. It's like anything. You can go to a restaurant and have a shitty meal. It doesn't mean you're not going to stop eating ever again, is it? You know what I mean? Or you can go to a gym and you might not like the gym, or a soccer team and you might, you know, so don't give up. Getting help, speaking to people, doing all those things is the right thing to do. And if you don't like who you've got, move on.
Yep. Perfect, mate. Spot on. Apart from saying soccer, everything's spot on.
That was my Tony Robbins. Like I blacked out there for a second. What? I just kind of went.
So old school, Will Ferrell and old school, just black suit.
No, it's really
perfect, mate.
It's inspiring, isn't it? We.
No, mate, quality, mate. Good on you, mate.
No, but I mean, for you guys and doing what we're doing here, like it is, like it's fucking amazing. It's like for us, it means like, you know, we need to keep going with all this, even ourselves as podcasts. Yeah. It's like there's so much to do here, and every time Gary and I connect on this topic, we leave a feeling energized, you know. So we know it's a very exciting time for this topic. So well done to you guys, and then yeah, let's go.
Yeah, well, exactly. I can't really say much else that Neil said. So let's crack on with a lot of the brilliant feedback.
So the first person, Gary O'Neill. Who's Gary? Put us.
Who's this you've been having an affair with?
Yeah, Gary, he's having an affair with the finance officer. Who's that? No, we won't top anyone in. This is all anonymous.
We're not going to use, we do have some names, but we're not actually going to use the names because we do want to.
There's a lot of drop-offs there on the call, I think, Gary. I have to.
A lot of the names we got through, we're not going to use because I gave some feedback that some of the topics were so good, the questions were so good, we do want to put this out publicly. So we're just going to use the questions and topics, give the feedback and talk about a lot of conversations, and then we're going to put it on Spotify and Apple and all the rest of it so it can go live, because we think the information and the things that you're going through is what we all go through, and it's worth talking about in deeper topics with other guests and live. So the first question, or the first topic, is fatherhood. And Neil is a father. I'm not a father quite yet, so I think it's probably a good question for Neil to tackle. And we have had some really good guests in the past discussing this topic, but Neil, do you want to maybe kick us off for this one?
He's showing me under the bus there. Now, Gary doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's a father yet. There might be a few little mini Garys going around. This is an interesting one. And to be honest, like the topic of fatherhood and kind of men's support has been skyrocketing a lot more in the last few years, which is great, right? Because men are traditionally very, you know, I'll fix this, I'll do this, the whole bravado thing. But when it comes to the softer side of things, we're actually pretty bad. We're also, you know, the whole dad body, that all, you know, we kind of put ourselves seconds in some cases and don't look after each other. And one of the episodes we actually had was about 5 Australians who all struggle with mental health, men all around different parts of Australia. And it came up quite often in that around dads and, like, you know, that whole male bravado thing, which does seep into the fatherhood thing as well.
Sorry to interrupt you. What was the documentary called again?
Happy Sad Man, it's called.
Happy Sad Man. Yeah, I forgot to put that note down in the resources, but we'll definitely note that down. That's a brilliant documentary. Yeah.
It's a brilliant documentary about like 5 very different types of men with very different types of scenarios. One guy was a surfer. One guy was an outreach worker for farmers, and he used to go out to all these like farmers who were on their own and, you know, just working basically 24/7 and not caring after themselves, absolutely buggered tired all the time, and they were just like really badly depressed and they had no network. And what was the name? Was it the tool shed or something they called it, which was like a community
yeah.
or men's sheds where they actually get together and discuss things, which is great. And yeah, I'm a father and my son is nearly 2, and when Sonny was born, my wife was put into a mum's group, which was an absolutely amazing thing that I thought that the hospital set up. So similar mums around the same time of birth were put into a group, and she's created some really long-lasting, amazing friends off the back of that, which has been great. And some people and this is mixing you with people that you wouldn't, you know, like she's even said herself, like I wouldn't normally hang around with this person, but they've actually formed a really nice bond and relationship. Now, if you think about fathers, like there was none of that for us, which is, you know, understandable in the way. Mum is the most important thing, you know, with that relationship with your child, 100%. But, you know, you can't forget about the dads. And we had this great episode with Matt Halston, who his whole job now is about supporting men in these areas who are kind of struggling a little bit with lack of support. And men traditionally aren't good at as bringing down the barriers and saying, hey, I'm not actually doing that well. If you ask a bloke, especially back in the UK and Ireland on the street, like, how you doing, mate? 99 times out of 100, they'll go, yeah, I'm fine, man. Yeah, cool. No one's going to turn around and go, oh, I'm absolutely stressed out of my being. You know, the kids drive me crazy. I'm about to have a panic attack. Like, you just, like, you don't get that, right?
You'd be like, oh, sorry, I asked, fuck's sake.
Yeah, you'd be like, fucking hell, I'm not going near that bloke again. And look, that's where the name of our podcast kind of came from, that, because back home you go, he's mental, you know, you say that there's always be like some bloke that live on the street, you go, your man's mental, and then that whole term itself has always had like a negative connotation, but you know, we're trying to make it like it's not necessarily a negative thing, it's just something about you that's different, you know. But yeah, check out Matt's episode because it's really, really good. And also there's another episode we did with Cecile Kamade, who's French, and she actually does her episode and her work. She has her own podcast as well, which is about masculinity, and some of the things that came up in that were amazing. Do you remember the thing, Gary, about, we were talking about toxic masculinity, which I know has come up a lot more lately, and then she was talking about masculine traits and feminine traits. I think I was, and she goes, I'm just going to handbrake you there for a second. And because I said something like, you know, when you're in a boardroom and you need to, like, you know, puff your chest and, you know, show your masculine energy. And she was like, well, why is that masculine energy? And I was like, I don't know. And she goes, well, why is that masculine? Like, why, if you're strong in a boardroom meeting, why isn't that called a feminine quality? And we didn't really have the answer for her. And the only thing like we could really come up with is they're just societal norms that have been created for millennia, let's say, you know, that like it is what it is kind of thing. But it really, when you start thinking about it in that sense, like, you know, why is, like, you know, driving fast seemed as a guy thing or whatever it is, like, you know, like when you start breaking down those gender kind of things, it opens it up that we all have those feelings. You know, we can be strong in some moments, we can be empathetic in another moment, and the ability to be able, well, to be aware of that first and foremost, I'd say, as a dad, is really, really important. And it actually, before our podcast, I actually landed on this amazing book, which is called Future Notes to My Son. And I would definitely recommend you guys trying to get it, because it's basically all these little affirmations. Some of them are short, like one line. Some of them are a full paragraph. Some of them are a few pages. And they're kind of like mini lessons. But it's not only for your son, it's almost for you as well. And it's little things like, you know, I'm going to teach my kid that it's okay to cry, you know, or to be upset and to share their emotions with me. You know, I don't want to put anything to the side. And I just thought it was an amazing book for me as a dad, but also for your future son or even daughter, to teach them empathy, to teach them that it's okay to not be okay. Because I don't know about you guys, but I certainly didn't get that growing up. You know, if something was going wrong in the household, it just wasn't spoken about. My mum and dad wouldn't speak for weeks on end. Sometimes if they had a massive fight, nobody addressed the situation. And then one day they would just meet each other in the kitchen and go, all right, they'd hug each other and then it'll be back to normal. So that's kind of how I learned how to, you know, that parental relationship. So yeah, I think fatherhood is, like, you know, as much about the masculinity for you as a dad, to let that down, to be a bit more open, to be a bit more empathetic, and, you know, help teach your kids through that. But also it's about yourself. And because this next generation is going to be a little bit more emotional, empathetic than the previous. Like, we see it, even Gary, you probably see it in your football work, right? Like, back in the old days, you could say anything to somebody, even as a kid. Like, I remember as a 13-year-old manager saying, oh, fucking get back, you know, and they'd be shouting all things to you, where you can't really do that anymore. So it is kind of exciting.
Was that you trying on the pitch?
Yeah.
Get back, you.
Get back, you're not on. But I mean, I that's how I learned. And like, to me, it's not really an issue. Anyone can say anything to me, like, you know, and I know it's not personal. You just kind of go, they're just trying to help you. But it's definitely changing this next generation. So that whole, like, the hard knocks kind of road doesn't seem to be working anymore. And it is exciting. Like, I think the future of fatherhood particularly is very exciting. I think this next wave of dads are going to be the most hands-on dads any generation has ever had, I think. COVID certainly lent into that. You know, our son was a COVID baby essentially, and you know, we're probably facing other issues now around, like, him being very attached to us. You know, whenever I go away now, my wife was telling me, like, he'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," and she has to pull up my Instagram account, which is at Neil O'Sullivan if you want to follow me.
That must be hard to look at.
But she has to pull up my photo, and then he sees me and goes, "Daddy," and then he goes back asleep, like, you know, which is also frightening. Like, you know, he can swipe, he can do all these things on social media. So we're probably going to face slightly different issues than previous generations. But yeah, the Matt Halson one is a good one because it's about removing your ego, removing your masculinity, and letting your guard down a little bit, which can not only help your son or your daughter, but it's gonna help you too.
Oh, just as a touch point there, all the resources, Neil's mentioned a few, and we will mention a few throughout. We've put it all in a little bit of a table, and we'll send it through, so you don't have to keep remembering everything we're mentioning because you've all got interest in different topics. So we're just going to put a bit of a resource section, so you just click on a link or use anything you think would be useful for you, so it's easier.
Yeah, there's a few people there. There's a few people there going, "Oh, thank God, my hand's telling me already." The other thing as well we had in our notes was there is no right way, you know. And when you become a father or a mother, you're going to get so much free advice, which, you know, people think they're great giving you throwaway advice. And even it's very easy to compare yourself to other parents. There was one of the questions later on, comparison. But you're different. Your scenario is different. The relationship between you and your wife or your husband, or two husbands or two wives, is going to be different. There's different dynamics. There is no, like, I think educate yourself as much as you possibly can, yes, but then it's up to you what pathway you choose. And it's exactly how we tackle mental health. There's so much stuff out there. It's great to be across as much of it as you possibly can. Well, Gary and I are very careful to go, this is what you should do, because me telling Gary what to do about something versus, you know, somebody else can have damaging effects, you know, in that sense. Like, so it's really only you and your partner and your family know what the best way is for you to do it, you know?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I can speak from myself growing up and even compare myself to my friends or people I know. We all had, some people grew up I knew with lots of money. Some people didn't have a lot of money. Some people had a troublesome childhood. Some people didn't. Some people had an isolated childhood. Some people had a very sociable one. Different parts of the world. Some people travelled. There's a million different things. And as a parent, you're always probably thinking they need to have lots of money. They need to have the best school. They need to have the best this, the best that, the best that. Every single person who all had these different scenarios growing up, now you look at them, there's no clear pattern in my mates anyway, in terms of how they've turned out from their childhood. The most important thing from what fact there is a clear pattern is their parents were there for them growing up. And that was pretty much it. They supported them and they were there. They taught them some decent principles of life. Be a good person. Like, I mean, like family values and things like that. And then from there, ultimately, it's going to come down to what the child's going to make their own decision. And I think that's eventually, I say child, when they get to old enough to start to have emotional, logical values or interests or whatever it might be, they're going to start to make their own decisions. They're going to have different peer groups. So I think Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think that the concern would be you don't get to see the fruits of your labour until 15, 20 years down the line. It's not like you have a good day and tomorrow you're like, I'm doing a good job here. Yeah. You don't actually know. And then even when it does come to 20 years down the line, what's the sit like right now? How much influence did my parents have on where I am right now? My thoughts, my feelings, how I behave versus somebody else. It's so hard to say how much of a percentage is down to the whole nurture versus nature sort of thing is always going to be a debate. All you can do is, like you suggested, is do what you think's right for you, how you believe is the right way of doing things. Because it is your child at the end of the day, and when they get old enough, they take those values and run with them. But I think from a fatherhood standpoint, I think that's just probably the best from your standpoint.
Yeah.
I think back yourself. Whoever said that, back yourself, mate. Yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job. And you can only do what you can do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not of the age yet where you can start going, you know, I'm not an elder, but I'm getting on age-wise. But I'll tell you now, like the secret around money and all that, which is what we never had any money when I was growing up. We were living in a middle-class life, but we were really working class. So we were always struggling to pay for things. The house was nearly gone, all that. And I think it ingrained in me this thing of like, I have to be successful. I never want to be in that scenario again where I'm struggling for money, which is not necessarily a good way to be. Like, so all my beliefs were created on this false sense of like, what's going to give me happiness. And then I end up never being content for many years. And then only because I sought help, went through a lot of this stuff and still not there. When you start looking back on like that, it was just insecurities and instability. And my parents gave me a lot of, my mum gave me love. My dad gave me a lot of structure of time and loyalty and values, but probably I didn't get that arm around the shoulder when you need to go, everything's going to be okay, son, or this is that emotional support. But the thing is, like, you end up kind of resenting that sometimes with parents, and you go, I didn't get this, and then you start doing the blame game. But they did their best. I'm in a great position now where years on where I'm like, we're going to be the same. We're going to do things or not do things with our kids. Like, nobody's perfect, and all you can do is your best, and you will recognize that in yourself. And also, like, my dad's family were working class, and they were the happiest family ever. They had nothing, like, really, like, there was 9 kids, it was madhouse. And I used to
had nothing, but they had everything.
Yeah, exactly. I used to go over there and like, even my dad today, like, he's just happy with a few pints on the weekend, and he works and he has his cup of tea and all that, and he's the happiest man ever. Versus like my mum's side were kind of the old money, and there was a load of family drama and all this crap about, when the house was being sold and everyone trying to get their, and it was like, all that stuff doesn't give you joy, you know what I mean? And it's one of the things we have later on. I've been getting mad into Marcus Aurelius now, and one of the things he talks about is like spending quality time with family, because one of the statistics that I've seen recently is the average family at the moment only spends 30 minutes a day together as a family, which is, that's scary to think of. Out of 24 hours, you're only spending 30 minutes together, because if you don't spend that quality time, as you were saying, Gary, in 20 years time, your kids will come out in the wash, you know what I mean? And obviously people fly away, and I know that on the call there's a lot of people who do a lot of stuff on the road, which we know, which is fine. But then if that's the case, then you need to be just more aware that, like, okay, I've got to put in that quality time. When I get home, I've got to be present for my son or my daughter or whoever it is. You got to just give that time. And if you do that, they'll see that, and you'll reap the rewards from that.
Quality. So there is a lot of different topics, and they're superb. So we'll try and crack on with what we might have to do here. Sorry, I was just thinking we should do this. We might have to break this into like a couple of different episodes. We'll just talk. Obviously, we'll go through it all today. Yeah, we can just probably snap into it 2 or 3, so it's easy to digest. But the next topic is, and again, another belter. There's a few within this one question, but struggling with body image, feelings of worthlessness, self-loathing. That's starting to seep into intimacy with a new partner, starting to see their own flaws. They want to feel comfortable and confident in their own skin again. Ultimately, how do they improve self-love? So there's a lot to this, and anyone who can't relate to this at some point in their life is probably kidding themselves on, especially in 2023 when we're bombarded, especially on social media, with what is deemed or said to be the perfect way to look, or the perfect way you should look, and all the rest of it. I know I battle with this. We've all got something in our life we think should be better or should look different, and there's a lot to talk about here. And we actually did just have a great episode that just went live yesterday, actually, with Ian Urich, who speaks about self-love and self-worth. His outlook on life he's probably above the norm in terms of positivity, but he does discuss it, so it's probably worth listening to that episode just to see how he deals with that. But there's a few different things you can do there in terms of body image, etc. I want to give you my little tidbit on it, nothing too long, but I think the biggest place to start would be reducing social media time. And maybe you're not on social media a lot, but the reason I say that is because naturally, just by default, you've been on social media, you start to compare yourself. I do it. I know for a fact you do it, so you've mentioned it in other episodes. It's just what happens. People maybe in your industry, friends, people you used to hang around with, you see how they're doing and you want to compare yourself. Maybe it's not necessarily body, but it could be a new car, a new house, a new job, a holiday to go on. Then you start comparing it to your life, and like Sully's already touched on, it's not your scenario, it's a different scenario. So putting yourself in their context doesn't make sense. And you probably don't even know their full context because they're only giving you the highlight reel on Instagram. So I think the first place would be being honest with yourself. How much are you on social media? Second thing I'd say regarding the body image stuff is how much of it is logical thoughts you're thinking and how much of it is emotional. And I say that because what you're thinking, realistically, ask yourself, is it true? So if there's a flaw, I say flaw hypothetically, that you think you see in yourself, is that something that you've created from a comment someone's made, from a comparison? You've looked at somebody else and you think that's how I should look. To me, that's emotional, and that's you thinking how really it's not the reality. That's not the logical way of thinking about things. You need to think, if you asked 1,000 people, would they even notice that flaw? Would they even make a comment about it? Some people, a lot of people probably think what you think is a flaw is a unique part of you, what makes you you. Maybe it's even a beautiful part of you. I know there's people in my circle who will say, oh, I hate such and such about me. And I'll say, no, I love that. That people are going to have different opinions. And I do get it. It's not just easy to turn that off, but I think social media certainly amplifies that. And there's going back to, I'm not Aurelius, but I think it's Seneca, the old stoicism of we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. That goes on to anxiety, goes to stress, goes to all these things. I think just being honest with yourself, writing down things that you believe. Is this true? Yes or no? Is it genuinely true? Has someone told you this? Or are you just thinking people are thinking this? That could be one way to just remove yourself from the actual process. There's a few little tidbits I'd give in terms of ways to practically make a difference. Gratitude's a big one. And this is going to be a common theme throughout this, because gratitude is very, very, it can be seen as woo-woo, right? And I'm going to, like, it's all right just saying, oh, you need to get up and do your gratitude journal and all that sort of thing. That's not what I'm suggesting. If you want to do that, it's by all means a good way of doing things. Write it down. But it can just be as simple as verbalizing to yourself in your own home what you're grateful for. Is simple. And one thing I do out loud, and my wife always laughs at me, because if I'm driving, I often drive over the Harbour Bridge to get to my work. And I always say to myself, I'm not going to take this for granted. And I'll start to say outside, unbelievable, over the Harbour Bridge, blue skies, what a life. I'll say it out loud, and I'll constantly say this sort of thing just to remind myself how lucky I am to be in the position I am or where I'm living. It's such a small thing, but internally, I might not be thinking that, but the more I say things out loud, I start to believe it. Thoughts become feelings, become actions, and it can sound woo-woo, especially in 2023 in social media when everyone's trying to tell you how to live and what to think and all the rest of it. But a lot of this is based on neuroscience, based on psychology, and we can rewire the way we think.
Well, let me put it into context with you, and I'm the same as you, Gary. I'd be like, gratitude, fuck off, it's a load of bollocks. Like, I would be the real, and like anti going, oh, I don't believe in that. But someone debunked it for me in a session I was doing, and I spend a lot of time in the negative, right? So you do a presentation or something, you go, fuck, I messed up that line, and that goes through my head. Now, 99% of the thing you just did could have been amazing, but I'd always default to the negative, which is like, not the best trait. But if you're constantly saying that in your head, this is where gratitude actually works, in the sense of, if you spend a lot of time in that going, that wasn't good enough, imposter syndrome, or, oh, I'm not great at that, that's your conscious mind. Imagine what that's doing to you subconsciously. That's just feeding your constant loop. You're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. If you start doing gratitude, as Gary was saying, writing down things as little as, what are 5 things I did today? Today I went and saw my mum, I did the washing, got my car license sorted, opened up a new bank, whatever it is. All these things, you're like, fuck, I actually achieved quite a lot today. There might have been one thing you didn't get to, but I guarantee if you do that very simple exercise, the pros way outweigh the cons. Now, if you've put that down on paper, that's you, your conscious, your subconscious brain eating that up. If you look in the mirror and go, oh, I like my hair today. Oh, I've got a bit of a tan, whatever it is, you're again putting that into your thing. Or if you verbalize it, like I was thinking of the Friends thing, I am a strong, confident woman. when Joey's trying to give up the cigarettes. But it's true. It's like if you're verbalizing that, your subconscious has no way to decipher what's reality or what's not. It just takes what you say and what you give it. So that alone just that was the light bulb moment for me going, well, if I just verbalize it, my subconscious mind doesn't know if that's real or not. So that's just going to take all that on. And if you constantly do that, you're going to slowly turn the tables on it. And then all of a sudden you're going to start thinking more positively. And on the note about Ian, he was saying that when he went to bed at night, he went to bed laughing. That was his thing. And when he woke up every morning, he smiled. They were two very basic things. And I watched this amazing TED talk on this as well, is that when you go to bed, the last 5 minutes before you go to bed are the most important minutes of your day, because you're about to go into your sleep mode. So whatever you have going into that in that immediate moment is what you're going to carry into your sleep. So Gary mentioned about flicking through social media, and I'm terrible at this, right? Last thing I do, you go on the phone, you flick through, you might see a few things, then you see some bloke that you used to, I don't know, hate in school, and he's just got a new Maserati, and you go, fuck, he's got a Maserati. What am I doing? My business, I'm shit, I'm not doing. And then you go, and then you get this like mini little, like, you know, and then that's what you're taking into bed. So at least 30 minutes before bed, get off social media so you don't get any of those triggers. And then what the guy said in the TEDx talk is like, just before you go to bed, try and think of something great in your life. Could be your partner, could be you scored a goal on the weekend. Just take that one thought, linger on it for 30 seconds, and then try and go to sleep. And you're bringing that positive thought into your whole sleep mode, because you've got 8 hours with your own mind and that. And that was actually a really interesting thing. So try that, maybe laugh, go to sleep, tell your partner before you're going to do that, I'm going to try this new thing. And like, yeah, you'd be surprised if it...
What the fuck are you laughing at?
Merry Christmas. But yeah, like and as Gary said, there's loads of ways you can do that. You can stand in the mirror and look at yourself and do a bit of a body scan. You can journal, but like, you know, all these, not everything is for everyone, but even listing out your achievements is a good one. And then I did this other amazing thing with my coach that I was working with. And if your self-worth is a bit low at the moment, you think, fuck this, I can't do it anymore, blah, blah, blah. There's this brilliant exercise, right? So from the moment you're born, just get a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be exact. And just think
from the moment you're born, fucking hell.
Yeah. Straight out of the womb. Oh. No, if you come, whenever you come of age, now think about when you were born and all the people that you've come in contact and your life has influenced from then till now. And that's everything from, right, okay, well, I played football my whole life, you know, on average there's 15 people on the team. I've been playing that for 20 years. Do quick math. There's 350 people. All right, I went to primary school, yada, yada, secondary school, yada, yada. I volunteered. I worked in all these jobs. They had X amount of staff. You know, for me, I was involved in this charity event for 4 years. We had a social media page with, you know, 10,000 followers. You know, you can do all that and go through that exercise, just everything you've done in your life, and a very rough estimate. And I came to something like 3.5 million people that my life would have touched appropriately.
The bastards.
Yeah, touched indirectly or directly at some point, which is amazing. And then you think, oh, my life's not enough. And you go, well, if it wasn't for me in this life, I wouldn't have influenced those 3.5 million people. So whenever you think I'm too small or I'm not enough, do that exercise. It was mind blowing for me, you know.
Now, I think ultimately what it comes down to, again, I always try and suggest to think of principles in general. And I think the principle here is think of what's within your control, and everything we've mentioned, tools, things you want to do. As Neil said, not everything's for everyone, but a lot of it is within your control. So there is things that you can do and make change with. For instance, if again, I don't know your context, maybe you don't even use social media, but as simple as, like for me, I put my mobile phone downstairs charging overnight, and I bought an alarm clock, and I have an alarm clock to wake me up. So for an hour before bed, I don't have a mobile phone, because it did used to impact my the way I thought. First thing in the morning, I'd check it, a bit of bad news, it would trigger me, or I'd compare myself and blah, 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 and it spiraled. But within my control, I had the choice to move my mobile phone out of there. I had the choice to go to bed earlier. I had the choice to write something down, celebrate your achievements. I mentioned this in a previous podcast. What I'd done to really, every time I felt low on a confidence, whatever else, I took a note of every single time I achieved something. Didn't have to be massive, but simple as I got my citizenship for Australia, I got a new job, I went on holiday. I just mark it down, and any time, especially later in the year, when I felt, I'm not good enough, I've not done well enough, I'd go back to this list and I would see all the things I accomplished this year, then I could go back to other years as well. And it sounds like such a simple thing. You can do this in your notes in your phone, but when you look at it all, it gives you perspective of, fucking hell, I'm doing all right here. And I know your question was mentioning body image as well. This is like a step on the ladder to building self-confidence and practicing self-love and realising that you've got plenty to offer. And you've mentioned you've got a partner and you're lacking, you're worried about intimacy, but you wouldn't have a partner if someone wasn't interested in how you looked or how you were as a person. So there's clearly positives there. You're focusing on the aspects of the 0.05% of what you don't like, whether the person you're with is probably focusing on the 99.9% or 99.5% of things they love about you. So again, it's just perspective. What we've provided, again, what we've discussed is just from the experts or the people we've spoke to in previous episodes, from our own experience. We don't have the full context, but hopefully there's some tools or some practical tips there. I would say just get on the ladder of practicing self-love first, and it will start to build over time and be consistent.
I was just going to add, there was another brilliant snippet that we had from an episode of it. He was the CEO of a mental health charity, and he said, micro moves make macro changes. So I know it seems like a lot, oh yeah, well, I'm not happy about this body part. Like, it's going to take me so much to get it through, or whatever it is it may be. But just start with one thing. It's that like 5-second rule as well. If you just make a decision in 5 seconds and move on. But Nick, who's the CEO, said, if you get out of bed, when you wake up, you have the choice to hit your alarm, your snooze, or get out of bed. If you do that, that's a little positive tick in your life. You go, should I have a shower now? Yeah, there's another one. Then all of a sudden and it's the same with whatever it is, exercise or body image, all those things. One little thing will lead to another thing and snowball. So just don't think about the end goal. Just think about getting to that next session or doing that other thing that you're going to do. And then the only other thing I'm going to say as well, which Gary, like you might go, I'm going to sound hypocritical here. If there's something about you that you need to get fixed or something like that, like, we're not going to sit here and go, don't do whatever. Like, if that's what you need to do to help your self-esteem or whatever that may be, I've had people in my life who had their ears pinned because they used to get bullied or things like that. If you need to go and do that, fucking go and do it. And don't feel guilty about it either, we have a nanny here, she's 19. Says your man who came from working class, I've got a nanny now. You probably think, what a fucking wanker. But that's Australia, guys. But I have a nanny and she's absolutely gorgeous, right? She's a beautiful little kid and she's brilliant. And she did some work on her lips the other day. And like she's absolutely stunning. But for her, she wanted to get it done. Now, as much as you kind of be a second parent to her, because she spends a lot of time with my kid, and you try and give her as much information and education as you can. But at the end of the day, that's her decision. If she wants to do it, I'm not in any place to go, what you did is wrong. And the worst you can do then is pass judgment onto whoever that person for whatever decision they've made. You can give them as much information as you want up front and try and give them the best chance. But at the end of the day, that person makes a decision. So, I just want to end on that note that, as well as we're saying, do all those great things that can help you, fair enough. But if you do want to do something that you feel like, I just need to get that done, don't feel shame about that, because I'm in the wellness game and I see a lot of the shame about that. People go and seek help and then they also then put shame associated with it. So you don't, just because you go and get your nose fixed, your ears fixed, or do whatever it is you need, lipo, whatever it is you may be, like, if you need to go and do that, go and do it and be proud of it and don't hold shame against it.
Yeah, good ending there, mate. Okay, so just that same person did mention grief. We've probably not got enough time to touch on that in the rest of the conversation, but we are going to put a resource in there for you regarding a previous episode we had, as well as a book that we recommend from the two experts we had on. It's really useful, but that'll be in the resource section.
The only quick thing about grief is the episode that we had with the girls, which we'll share.
That was the one, yeah. That's the one I'm going to share, yeah.
Yeah, like, basically, in a nutshell, that episode was like, you've probably heard this. I actually heard it last week and actually handbraked someone on it because I was like, oh, that's actually not true. But the girls were saying in all their research, they both lost their mum at a relatively young age, and they were put into a support group following the funerals to help each other out. And then they connected and they set up a podcast off it. So again, from a negative, or let's say a sad experience, it actually formed a beautiful relationship between these two. Now they were speaking at Vivid Sydney, which is a huge thing about grief. So they've made such a beautiful positive out of it. But their whole thing was the 5 stages of grief is just urban myth. It was a formula that was created, what was it, Gary, in the 70s by some doctor in a very isolated scenario, which was then rolled out as a ubiquitous thing that, everyone goes through 5 stages of grief in this linear fashion. You're angry first, then you have, remorse, then you're sad, then you're happy. All of that, they said, is complete bullshit. They showed a graphic of what grief was, and rather than it being a linear thing, it was like this. It was up, down, left, right, all over the shop. And they said grief is an emotion that you need to experience. Hiding grief, which is something I do, I've struggled to grieve, is actually bad for you. Because if someone dies, you need to give it the time that it deserves. And that could be 6 months, 12 months. It's your whole life. Like they were saying, you actually live with that grief forever. That's not a bad thing. It's a nice thing because you're remembering that beautiful person that you had in your life. So you shouldn't let go of that. It's not about getting over grief. And it can pop up in different scenarios and things like that. And then the other thing that resonated with that episode was around whatever it is you need to do to get yourself through the grief. And they even mentioned alcohol, right? Which we're not necessarily going to condone. And I know in Ireland, anyway, funerals are the biggest piss-ups you could do, and it's usually great fun. But alcohol and things like that might serve a purpose in that moment, whatever it is, to get you through that next phase. So that was a fascinating thing, that they kind of turned the whole grief thing upside down. So listen to that episode, because I think on most of the episodes that we've done, Gary, going into that and what I came out the other end, I was mind blown about how wrong I was about the whole grief situation,
Yeah, very good podcast. And if you don't like listening to podcasts, they've also got a book as well. So yeah, highly recommend that. I'll be in the resources for you. So just take a quick breath there. We've touched on fatherhood. Hopefully we've gave some good resources, which you'll get in the resource section, discussed how to stop comparing yourself to others, or how you can. And then we've spoke about self-love, building some self-confidence, and again, some little practical tips there in terms of practicing gratitude or celebrating wins. The episode does cut off a little bit here, but it's for good reason. We have extended this episode into a part 2, part 3 and a part 4 because there was so much good stuff to go through. So apologies for cutting off mid-sentence, but we move straight on to the next question in the following podcast.